Hello, and thanks for tuning in. For the Looking Back series, I'm Marianne Pleva. Programs in this series feature local people who have done or do extraordinary things. Both of my guests today are long-time members of the First Baptist Church in Essex on 10 Prospect Street. In addition to many other volunteer positions at the church, Dick Adams of Essex and Dot Bergen of Clinton are the people who keep the tower clock running. Welcome to you both.
Thank you for having us.
So we have a lot of ground to cover today, so let's get started. I think it's just the most amazing building, and so let's talk about the architecture. Who was the architect?
Well, it's a very unique design, and if you look at the church, the front of the church, you'll see that it's the sides of it are slanted. All four sides of the front of the church are slanted, and in the center, the church facade is divided into three sections, and the center section actually protrudes outward and goes up, rises up to the tower on top where the dome is. The architect was Menard Lefebvre, and he designed this in 1845, the church having been built in 1845 and 46. And just prior to that, one of the three churches of this same design is located over in Sag Harbor, and he designed that church the year before he designed the Essex church. So they are very similar in design.
There's our church from Sag Harbor. I know, that's amazing too.
And that's a Presbyterian church.
Oh, that's a Presbyterian. Oh, that's right, I
Yes.
didn't even think about that. And you you went to visit a few years back. They were re-landscaping or something.
Yes, yeah.
And the steeple on this one?
No, the steeple on this one blew down,
And
and they never replaced it.
okay. And I'm sorry, I probably interrupted you. But who was the builder?
The builder was Jeremiah Gladwyn. He was the contractor, and he was a member of the church, a deacon, and he did this just maybe 10 years before he passed away.
I wonder if he built other things in town, or he just did it for the church.
And I think he was a local builder.
Yeah, okay. And I do have, I have an etching of the old style, the old church that I found in your church. There it is. I think that is such a wonderful picture. And that's how it looked before it lost its tower,
Yes.
so its steeple. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, when the church was originally built, it didn't have the spire on it that you see in this picture. That was added a little bit later through the generosity of one of the members. And it's interesting that the church was built for a total of about $6,500, and the spire cost $1,000 to put on. Then in 1904, they had a problem. They knew there was a problem with the spire, so they had it inspected. And they found out at that time that it wasn't safe, so they had some work done on it. Apparently there had been some leaks that rotted the timbers up above, so they needed some repairs. And then in 1926, one of our longtime members of the church, lifelong members of our church, Helen Henry, was visiting the parsonage. And during this time, there was a big windstorm came up, and she witnessed the whole spire blowing off, down, landing in the front of the church. Fortunately, no other damage was done, and no one was injured. But of course, it allowed the elements to get into the church directly above the clock, as a matter of fact.
Right. And then they put the current tower in. So was the clock higher? Oh no, the clock didn't come yet. Or was the clock in there? Was the clock in there when the steeple?
Oh, yes, yes.
Fell,
The
okay.
clock was put in 1860, and the spire came down in
Okay.
1926.
So was it higher up than it currently is now when it was in the thing?
Yes, it was
Okay.
it was about 20 feet higher than
So you
the
have
current.
one less flight to walk up, right?
Yeah.
So, and is that when that beautiful stained glass was put in, when they put the tower in instead of the?
Yes,
People.
through the
There's
generosity
a
of
beautiful
Mr.
shot of that.
E.E. Dickinson, who
Uh-huh.
was the owner of the E.E. Dickinson Witch Hazel Company in Essex. He donated quite a bit of money to the church at that time. Apparently it needed repairs, and at that time they also did a lot of renovation. They took out the old white box pews and replaced them with oak, a dark oak pew that was curved in shape. They also, the balcony extended all the way to the front of the church, and they took part of that down and took the windows out, the long windows. There were 8 of them in the sanctuary, 4 on each side. And they took those out and replaced them with stained glass windows. Very, very beautiful windows.
Wow, he was very generous, and he was
Yes.
very close, so they
Yes.
probably, you could see that church from his home. I guess that was his home on North Main Street, the one that's
Yes.
currently for
Yes.
sale.
Mhm.
So prior to the church being built, where did people meet? Because I know this congregation goes way back to like the 1700s, right?
Yes.
So where did they meet?
The first person to declare himself a Baptist in Essex was Selah Post, and he was baptized in 1805. The Baptists of Essex first held their meeting at his home on New City Street in Essex. And
I think we have a photo of that, his home, on New City Street.
the history of our denomination in Connecticut goes back to 1705, when the First Baptist Church was organized in Groton. And then in 1804, a young merchant in Essex, Jared Hayden, had much to do with the establishment of the Baptist Church and in Essex. And by 1809, 22 people had been baptized and organized as the Saybrook branch of the East Haddam Baptist Church. Our church, First Baptist Church, was established in 1811. And then also the Essex Art Association was a conference house for the church, built in 1837 and sold in 1845.
Looks so pretty in that picture. Well, I think it just got painted. I think one of our
Yeah, that is
technicians here
nice.
did a little work on it too. That's probably why it looks so good
Yeah,
now.
looks great.
Then there was also, wasn't there also where the firehouse is out on Prospect Street? And it's hard to visualize that that was more of the hustle and bustle back then, I guess, was on Prospect Street, not on Main Street. They, because the churches and the town hall was there. I think there is a picture of the town hall, which you said was really just the town building, right?
It was an auditorium.
With a big auditorium.
Mainly,
There's
and
that picture of that.
the municipal offices were down on Main
Oh,
Street.
by the post
where
office,
the post office
right.
building is.
And then where the firehouse is, which is now a home, there was, if I'm reading this right, there was a stone or a brick building there that was also a meeting place.
Yes, and that was
But
a
we
church
have-
that was built prior to a small building that was built prior to our church that we now have. And that's when
And
that
they-
conference room with the art gallery was also part
Okay.
of that.
And
And that
the-
was across from Hills Academy.
Okay. So a lot of different, moving around till you finally got
Yes,
to
that
your-
church was a brick church, and it had a small tower on one end
Oh,
with
it
with a
did.
bell.
And
Not the same bell that we have now, but
Do you have any kind of a drawing or a picture of it? I
no,
didn't see anything.
no, we don't
Okay.
have anything that would show that.
So,
But that was torn down when they after they
yeah,
built the
that's too
current
bad.
church.
We don't have any history, a photograph to go back. So when was the clock gifted to the town, Dick? And
Well-
why was it placed there, you know, because,
Well, it was gifted in 1860. And the reason why it was put where it is in the Baptist Tower is because the Baptist church was only a few years old at that point, and it had that lovely big spire. It was the highest building in town and considered the finest building at that time. So it was gifted by
the gentleman? I
Yeah.
think it was a Pratt.
Yeah,
because they were all
it
over
was
the place.
gifted by Theodore Dwight Post. Theodore
Oh,
Dwight
Post, Pratt, was it?
Post.
Okay.
Pratt, rather.
And
Pratt in
yeah.
1860.
Okay.
And
There he is.
Oh, and there's his
yes, and
gravestone.
he stipulated at that time when he gave this gift that it be placed in the tower of the First Baptist Church. And so a little story that goes along with that is that as a young man, he was engaged to Susan Post, another member of the congregation. And before they were married, they don't know really why the engagement was broken, and they never married. Neither one of them ever married.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I wish we had more details.
Yeah, and their graves are in the back of
Yeah,
the Baptist Cemetery, probably within 10 feet of each other.
And does the cemetery belong to the church?
Well, the cemetery originally belonged to the church. When the lot was first given, it had a half acre in the back of the church that was used for the cemetery. And that cemetery had its own cemetery association with its own officers and own board of directors. Many, of course, were the members of the church. But in recent years, it became more difficult to have the funds to maintain it. So Riverview Cemetery Association took over the maintenance of it.
Is it filled or are there spaces left?
No, it's filled.
It's filled?
Yes.
Okay, like Riverview. And like the other one too on Grove Street, I think, must be filled. That's a very small
I think
one.
so.
Yeah. So, Dad, I wanted to ask you about the beautiful brownstone monument out front.
Yes, that has quite a history. In 1817, a house of worship was built across from Hills Academy, and Elder Asa Wilcox of Lyme preached the dedication sermon. He began his pastorate on April 14th, 1818. At his death in 1834, he was buried in Salem, but in the fall of 1854, his remains, along with his family, were removed to Essex to where the monument is.
Oh, that's very interesting. Wow. I noticed also that in the front, there's a hitching post, little rings there, and I'm just wondering if anyone's been using them lately.
Not that I know of. We have some lovely flowers growing along the wall, but back in those days, when the church was first built, the posts lined the stone wall on both sides of the outside pulpit, and then people coming by horse and buggy used to hitch their horses to the rings. And now it is our front lawn, and the rings are a reminder of the past.
Well, it looks so pretty. Yeah, the whole house, the whole yard looks very pretty. Now, there's a rumor that on Election Day that Mr. Herb Clark drives his carriage to vote. And then if he does that, he supposedly gets a free lunch at one of the local restaurants. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, and I've never seen him, but I heard that rumor. So, yeah, that's pretty neat. You know, before we get into more detail on the clock, I would like to go to a public service announcement. And we have a couple. One's on the Ronald McDonald House, and the other one is on a very famous cat. So if we could go to those two announcements.
Adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. As it turns out, we have very similar personalities. And this cat makes me make art because he's always motivating me to take pictures of him, to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. It's just that simple. Well, he's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
So we're back. That was a fun PSA, wasn't it, that cat? Hopefully all the cats around town will be watching that. So since you're well known for being the clock winders, Dot, can you explain a little bit more about how that works? And how long have you been doing that job?
Okay. I started in 1988 when I became the sexton of the church. And I retired after 15 years, but I'm still the clock winder. So, and it's a great thing to be taking care of it.
So who's the
along
boss?
with Dick.
Because you have your associate here, Dick.
Yeah, Dick is the main person
he's
for
the
the
main,
clock
okay.
because he maintains when it stops and oils it, and
Yeah.
he really takes very good care of it.
So that's a good system.
Yes,
You don't
it
want to
is.
be the boss, right?
No, I don't want to be
Okay.
the boss. So anyway, the steps are very steep. I count them as I go down, 16, and narrow and creaky. And thank goodness for a railing, because we
yeah,
kind
good
of go
solid
down
railing.
sideways. We walk down sideways. And we did take Mary Ann up to the tower to see, and she says she doesn't want to be a clock winder.
I said, when do I get to go down?
And the strike side winds easier because of a double pulley arrangement. The clock side harder because only one pulley but fewer turns. They are weighted by large granite blocks to keep tension on the ropes.
And it's real easy to do once you're up there, right?
Yes,
You don't need any muscle power at all. Just,
for the clock wind, yes, it's heavier because there's only one pulley, whereas the other one side is lighter. And but every time I'm up there winding, I count. So I do 46 winds on Tuesday, and Dick winds on Friday, and our pastor's husband, Matt Nuss, he winds on Sunday for
right?
us.
So you don't have to belong to a gym, just go wind the clock.
Right, right.
So many times a week. So
And it was funny because when Matt first did it the first time, he was claiming how his muscles ached from He wondered how us
it is strenuous.
75 and so on, how we managed to do it. But
Yeah. Okay. So if somebody out there is watching, I know that Dick and Dot would love to have some helpers, and is interested in seeing that mechanical clock, or would like to help be a winder. I'm sure they would allow you to take one of their chores away. So you could contact Dick, and we'll show his number later on. But I wanted to talk about the house next door, which is also another beautiful building, the rectory, or the pastor's house. When was that acquired?
the parsonage was built in 1846, and the Reverend William G. Howard and family called in March of 1847 were the first family to occupy it. And then in 1988, Erica Wimber was called as our pastor and shared the parsonage with a Rabbi Marcia Plum for about a year. The rabbi was an interim at Beth Shalom in Deep River and needed a place to stay. And the two of them started the Interfaith Bible Study, which we went for a few years. our church.
Now, was it somebody's home? Or-
Originally,
Originally, or it wasn't built by the church?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, it was built by the church?
It was built as a parsonage
Okay,
for
okay.
the ministry.
All right, so there's always been a parsonage, unlike the one down on Main Street was somebody's home and then they deeded it to the St. John's Church, I guess.
Yes.
But has
Yeah.
been sold.
so many families have lived there.
And then there was another interesting person that visited as a child, Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yes, Frank
Right.
Lloyd Wright, we found, was there when he was about 6 years old with his parents, of course. His grandfather was a Baptist minister. David Wright was his name. And he also had a home over on Maple Avenue. And so it was a very short period of time, about 6 months that they were there.
Maybe that's how he got interested in architecture.
Well,
looking at
actually,
that
he got
church.
interested in architecture because his mother bought him some blocks, some maple blocks of all different geometric shapes, and he played with those endlessly,
Wow, I see. I never
even
knew
as he
that.
got older.
Yeah, that's a good story. So Dick, at one time the clock was changed to electric. So how did that work out?
Well, not very well. In the late 1940s, the clock was electrified. A local electrician electrified it by using a solenoid up where the bell is located above the clock. And I think the reason why they did that was because they probably couldn't find people to go up there and wind the clock.
Yeah.
So they electrified it, and you could actually cause the bell to strike using a push button down in the sanctuary. The solenoid operated a hammer-like device that hit the rim of the bell up above. That's how it was activated. But the problems they had with it was being located up there. There was louvers on all four sides of the bell, and the solenoids would get corroded, and then of course it wouldn't work. So eventually they turned it back to a manual operation.
I see. Well, where you guys come in
Pardon?
every week, where you two come in,
Yes,
back to manual.
yes.
So in 2010, I read in one of those newspaper articles, the passage of the time stopped, the clock stopped, and people really missed it because you could see it on all four sides, which I never thought about that, but
Yes.
and originally, before all our watches and, our technology, that was how people told time. And so when that stopped, how did you ever find somebody to fix a clock that big? And
Well, we had several people that worked on it. Al Strempel and his son Mark from Deep River were the first people that turned it back into manual operation after it was electrified. And then we had another clock repair person. His business was called About Time. He was in Higginham. And more recently, we have had a man who was originally located in Madison, but has since moved his business last summer over to Wallingford. And he is Kirtland Crump, Crump Clocks. They have been very helpful in getting it going. And at that time, we had a fairly large bill. The town of Essex was, of course, responsible for the repair and upkeep of the clock, and so the Essex Foundation stepped in and helped out with the cost of that. And we also had some help from the Essex Fire Department because the hands on the clock were replaced. They were originally made out of wood, cypress wood, and those were replaced with aluminum. So they used the aerial ladder to go up and
I think we have a picture of
replace
that
the
being
hands.
repaired with, yeah, and
Yeah.
I guess the fire department comes to your aid when you need to go up there and do something. That's Ron Sen, one of the local firemen, so that's an interesting shot. That was off, I don't know, off of an article in the newspaper, I think. So thank you for that whole explanation, and I know that you both are so fond of that church, but what to you makes it so special?
Well, the people themselves were warm and accepting, caring, supportive, and loving. And for example, we supported Mark, and he was looking for a living donor for a liver transplant. And so we've been supportive of him and his wife Nina all through this. And we had a fundraiser to raise money for the donor when we found a donor for when they would be out of work. And that turned out really well. And so our church family has been with them throughout. And a donor was found after over 100 people were tested.
It's wonderful.
So it was a long process. And so
And he's
we're
doing
so
well
happy.
now. He's
He had
doing well.
surgery yesterday,
That's
and he's
great.
doing well,
That's great.
and the donor is doing well.
Uh-huh.
So, and our sanctuary is beautiful and tranquil due to the stained glass windows and the colors to match the organ pipes. And the organ is majestic in appearance and sound.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about that beautiful organ, but here's a photo of the inside. And I know that you also have an elevator, which I think you must be the envy of all the other churches because they all talk about one. And the other thing is, if you could tell us about, there's a wonderful story of how the meal sites all began, and it all began with your church. So if you could
Yes.
talk about that and your pastor.
Yeah. Well, the elevator was due to a capital fundraiser that we had in 1990, so it's used by many people. The soup kitchen, in 1988, when Erica Wimber came as our pastor, we decided to have a vision day, and that was one of her visions that we should talk about having a soup kitchen, which we named the soup cellar at that time. And so we all thought that was a wonderful idea. And of course, there was a lot of, oh, we don't need a soup kitchen, we don't need anything like that in these towns. So in 1989, we started it, and it's grown into the humongous Shoreline Soup Kitchen and Pantries. There's meal sites every day, and there's like 4 or 5 pantries that people can go to during the week. And and our church, First Baptist Church in Essex, serves meals every Monday, every Monday night.
Well, I think that's such a wonderful story because, people think Essex doesn't have a need like that, but there's a need like that all over.
The whole shoreline,
Right.
it's just people come from
And
all
it was so
over.
good of your church to be that foresighted.
Well, we're just so pleased that it's turned out to be what it is.
I think we're running a little out of time, but can we talk about the organ for a moment or no? Sure. Okay. So do you have more information on
Yeah.
that wonderful organ?
Yeah, it's a Steer and Turner organ, tracker organ, and it was 1889. It was brought to the church, and it's pumped by hand by Walter Lynn of Essex as a young boy to supply air to the organ. In the early 1900s, electric blower was installed. And then restoration work was done in 1992, also bringing back music to the oboe pipes. The leather bellows were replaced in 2010, And it has a wonderful sound, especially when the music swells.
Yeah, wonderful. Austin Organ, right out of Hartford, but I think they're out of business now, for a while.
Yeah.
They've been around. They had been around for a long, long time. Before we close our show, I just hope that you'll tell me about the arts and crafts. How long has it been going on? You have it on the green because I always like to go down
25
there.
years?
About 15 years, I think.
Oh, I thought it was longer than that.
No, maybe.
Somewhere between 15 and 25
Okay.
years.
And it's going to be this year in August.
In
It's
August.
always the same.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's always
month, yeah.
usually the third week.
And we have crafters come from all over to participate, and they set up their stalls, and we just have people coming through all the time because Essex has so many visitors, so it's a very good place to have it at the
Right.
town green.
Green's a
And
beautiful
then-
spot.
And at the gazebo, we serve lunch, which is always great, and have baked goods for sale, and our homemade jams and jelly made by our parishioners, our women. And it's a great day.
Okay, I agree because I've been
And
down.
a
as
lot of the
consumer.
crafters love coming because it's such a lovely site with the water, and usually a
Yeah.
nice breeze to keep you cool.
Well, this has been a very interesting conversation, and I'm so glad that you came.
We're happy to be
Thank
here.
you for having us.
And it's so interesting to hear about that clock that does belong to everybody. You know, it's the town's clock, and it's in the beautiful building, and it's very safe with you guys.
Yes, and we
But,
hope that in later years that it'll still be running and being taken care of.
Being taken care of, very good. Do you have any other comments before we close our show?
No.
If you haven't seen the church, drive up to Prospect and have a look.
Yeah.
You'll find a few other churches there.
Known as Churchill.
Yeah, known once as Church Hill, has a lot of names. Was it Methodist?
Yeah.
Well, not Methodist Hill.
It was
Church
called
Hill.
Methodist Hill at
Pond,
one time,
Pond something,
and
but-
it was called Baptist Hill too
Okay.
because of the Baptist
Yeah.
churches being up there.
so now it's just plain old Prospect Street, right?
We have many people come by and taken pictures. I've seen people stop by, and
Oh,
a few
yeah.
times I've brought them in the church to see it.
Oh,
and
good, good.
They
That's
enjoy
great. It's
that.
very beautiful inside as well. So unfortunately, we're out of time. I hope you enjoyed our walk back through time as much as we did. If you would like to know more about the clock or help with the winding, please call the church at 767-8623 or Dick Adams at 767-8174. And if you'd like to be a host on this program or host this program, please email me at Contessa. I'm just losing my words here. We'll flash that, Contessa, Contezza @gmail.com. Thanks to our crew today, Bill Cook, Al Vankovich, Chris Morgan, and a special thanks to Dick Adams and Dot Bergon, Essex Clockwinders who have made this show possible, and also to Corey O'Connell and Ken Butterworth, who I'm sure everyone knows. For the Looking Back series, I'm Marianne Pleva. Owen, thanks for watching.